Hello and welcome to the third instalment of the Artrium's watercolour workshop with me, Claire. Now, over the past couple of sessions we've looked at an introduction to watercolours and we've done a bit of work on colour theory and colour mixing. This session is going to be primarily based on portraits. We're going to need everything out of our packs, our paint, paintbrushes, watercolour paper, everything to create our portrait. Like I said last time, you're going to need a photograph or a photocopy of a picture. You could even use a picture from a newspaper or a magazine. So I'm going to go off camera now so you can see a little bit better what I'm doing. So I've had to frantically look around my house because I was unprepared for an old picture. I have found this one of my niece. It's just a copy of a picture that we have, so we've got loads of copies of this particular picture, so it's a one that you don't mind kind of having to put in the bin at the end because we are going to be creating a monoprint. I know that the Artrium's done some drawing workshops, so if you are more confident copying the picture first and drawing it straight on, then that's absolutely fine. But what I find quickest, and some may say it's cheating a little bit, but it's just to show you the different techniques with the watercolour rather than drawing techniques. So I learnt this technique a really long time ago, really easy. It's just like making a carbon copy really. I find that it's best to use oil pastel or a crayon. I'll show you what you can also use a pencil, so I'll show you the effect that you'll get with a pencil, and I would probably recommend using a pencil if you are going to be drawing with if you are going to be painting on top of watercolours, because if you did use a crayon that is oil based and it will sort of resist from the watercolour, so your lines would come up really strong and bold, which we want to kind of avoid that. So it does take a bit more of a longer time and it is a bit more tedious when you're filling in the back of this picture, but the results are worth it. So what we're going to do is take our picture, photograph, I'm going to turn it over onto the back. You can see it's quite old. It's been in a drawer for, well, she's nearly 7, and that's her there. So when she was newborn, so it's like 7 years old, old picture, and I'm sure she'll appreciate a watercolour version of it. So what I would suggest, I can't really show you this on camera, but I would hold this piece of paper up to the light so you can see through it. And then I would make an outline of, I wish you could see through it, so I'll show you. I'm just going to show you here. I would make an outline on the back of where the picture is. So there's my outline. Flip it over. So I've made an outline all the way around here on the opposite side, because this is the part that I want to copy onto the watercolour paper. So what you would then do is go in, hold your pencil like so that you can cover a larger surface area and just shade in all of that area. So what I'm going to do, just to save time, I'm going to pause the video and fill that area in and then come back. So 2 minutes, it'll be 1 second for you. So once you've filled in that area, you'll have something that looks a little bit like this. I'm just going to fill in a few more of those bits because I have quickly just went over it with a pencil. And this is going to sort of make a carbon copy of the drawing, so we don't really have to worry about our proportions or anything to do with drawing, but it's a good technique to learn. It's going to be upside down for you just while I get the basic lines in. What you can do is get a bit of masking tape or sellotape and stick this down, so because if this moves, we're eventually going to go in and copy this, it'll come up underneath, and if it moves then it won't sort of coincide and it might come up to sort of not the desired effect that you wanted. So I would recommend securing that down. I think I am going to do that actually with a little bit of gum tape, because it's the only thing that I have handy. One little bit on the bottom. and that'll just slightly secure it. So once that's all secure on the page, I would recommend using a pen. Now the only reason I recommend this is if you use your pencil will eventually get blunt and it'll give you different variations of lines, and you can't really tell unless you keep on lifting the page up how thick the line is and how precise it is as well. With a pen you've got the metal end and it never gets blunt, so you've got that consistent line all the way through. So I'm going to start. You can start anywhere you want, but I would just pick up the main sort of features of the face. I would do maybe the outline to begin with. I'm pressing down a little bit firm, just so we know we're going to get that impression underneath. And that it will come up quite light because you're using a pencil, but that's like we looked at in the previous video. I think it was the first video that I did. The line, the sort of pressure that you apply. I think actually I'm going to find it. I've got it here. This is what I'm talking about. So when we did our lines, where you've got this really thick line and it doesn't really look as good as when you've got no lines. So hopefully when we lift this up it will be quite faint so that we can still see it. Sorry, I've got a very squeaky chair. So if that's distracting. So that it'll come up and we'll be able to see it with our eye, but you'll easily be able to hide it. So I'm just going to make the necessary marks just so I know where I am. What I like to do as well is I like to make, that has moved, see, it's not as secure as I wanted it. I like to make the marks where shadows are as well, so that I know where I'm going to add the darker areas. So although there isn't any lines here, I have marked under where the shadows need to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to nip off camera because I'm going to be here quite a while doing this, and I know it's been nearly half an hour already. So I'm going to complete this and then you will see what I'm on about. I won't reveal it until I'm happy. Well, I'll keep on looking under it to make sure that everything's covered, but I won't reveal it to you until you see kind of what the pen does to the picture. Just let the camera focus a little bit. There we go, so you can see all of the lines that I've made here. I'm just going to do a few finishing touches. Make sure I'm happy. And I'm going to just lift it from the underneath. I'm going to keep it secure in case we've got to flip it back down. And you won't really be able to see much, I'm just having a little look to make sure I'm happy. I think what I want to do is add a few more lines just in this area. And then I'm going to show you up close. Right, so I think I'm happy with that. I'm going to unstick it. And you'll be able to see if the camera is, there we go, very, very thin, faint lines, so you can barely see it. There we go. Now what I would start off with, I would always have your picture next to you as a reference. I won't really be able to fit them both onto the screen right now, and it is going to be a little bit upside down, so but I will turn it around like throughout all the stages. So because the image was, I think it was originally in colour, but it was kind of, she was wearing white and she was quite dark when she was born, so it does look quite like a black and white picture, but I am going to try and add bits of colour here and there. So I think what I'm going to do is start off with a wash. And it'll, at this stage, it'll look like a mucky water. So I'm going to go straight in with that. And because it's kind of like a barely there colour, it's very easy to recreate if you do run out. So it doesn't need to be like massively exact. I'm going to just pop some more water in my tray, a little bit more brown. So that's gone quite a lot darker than what we had before. So all we do is add a little bit more water until we're happy. Test it on the tester sheet. And then I'm going to do the entire page as well. So what you would do at this, or before this as well, is tape down the image, but because I'm going to have to keep on lifting it up and showing you, that's the reason I haven't. But what I would recommend if you are doing this at home, and if you've got like a dining room table, just to get some masking tape or gum tape and a board and just stick it down just so that you avoid the paper buckling at the sides, and then you can get more even paint distribution as well. I'm just continuing this wash all the way, and I'm using quite a big brush as well, so you don't have to be precise with this. I think sometimes it's nice when you get those organic lines that you didn't really intend, but you have it anyway. So now that we've given the page a bit of a wash, a bit of background, I've put in the tray different levels of water. And what I'm going to do is, just to start off with, is go for the darker tones and mix them into the water so that we have different tones. Because although there are quite some dark parts to the picture, there's a lot of different gradients going on, different tones. So I'm just trying to build up a little bit of a bank. I think this one at the end is going to be the darkest. It's totally up to you how you do it. I like to use the lid of the paint palette. You might have your own palette that you use. You might even have a better selection of paints if you've got your own personal selection. So I think while I've still got the darkest colour on my brush, I'm going to just go in. There's quite a large area there for the hair where there's not as much detail, sort of towards the top and towards the side. So I'm just going to follow that outer line. I don't have too much on my brush because we really want to be able to control that. And remember, I've marked all of the areas where I feel need more shading or less shading. So I am going to miss those areas out for now. And you don't have to go in straight away with the really dark colours because you can build on this as well. So you can go in with like a wash and then you could layer that up once it's dried. I'm going to sort of wash that out and then let it dry and go back in. I'm going to even use our technique where we start from dark, add a bit more water and then it goes a bit lighter. And always remember, tissues can help when you do sort of end up with a lot of water. Can you see this bit here? I didn't intend that to be so dark. What we do is pick it up with a tissue and then we just wash it back out again. So you might want to make your lines a little bit more bolder if you really can't see them, but I feel like it's the best thing to do when they're just ever so slightly there. So they kind of help you in a way, just with your proportion and stuff. But you might be a much better drawer than me and just be able to paint it straight away. But I know that I certainly won't be able to do that. So I am just following the shapes as well, so I'm not totally relying on the lines because the lines don't bring any sort of tonal value. They just give you that sort of guide. And just where's needed, where I need to add darker colours, I am just going back into my paint palette here. I'm just layering it on, but I am putting that onto a wet surface which doesn't always absorb it as much as you want. So don't worry, you can always let it dry and then come back to it. So I know our hairline comes down here, but it does sort of blend in quite a lot. There's all these shadows just from the way that the picture is. And it is quite a lot darker towards the top of here. So we'll blend that out. So I am just making kind of a little bit of a texture because we know that it's going to be a painting. I don't want it to be a totally photographic representation. I don't want it to be a total copy because it will have that sort of painted value to it. So don't think that you have to have it absolutely perfect, because you don't, because what's the point in it being a painting if it doesn't look like one? So I will try to add as much detail as I can, but it's not the sort of be all and end all. So I've just put a bit more water on my brush. I'm just going to slightly blend that in. And I'm going to wash these out a bit more until I'm happy. I think what I'm going to do now is go off camera and just get all of the main parts out so that you're able to see it a bit better, because I think I'm going to be spending quite a long time creating this, and the video will go on and on and on if I don't sort of speed it up. So I'm just going to nip off camera, get the main points, and then you'll be able to really see what I can see. So you should be able to see now I'm just adding all of the main points, and I'm just putting a thin kind of wash over the entire face just so that I can start a foundation of sort of my starting point really of building up the 3D effect on the face. I will add bits here and there, and I really want to break down these harsh lines, so these are just still a guide. And I'm always, I know you can't see what I'm doing beyond what's on the screen, but I am referring back to my image constantly, especially if you're drawing like a celebrity or somebody that you'd know. Any like, so if you make any lines that aren't really on their face, it'll start to not look like them, is what I'm trying to say. So this will take a really long time. Like, I'll probably spend a few hours on this. I won't torture you all by staying on camera doing that, but I'll check back in here and there and just let you know the kind of techniques that I've used, and then hopefully that'll help you when you're creating your picture. I know this part here looks quite dark, and it is where like our eyebrow is. Not the light shining, but that will eventually fade out and we will get these nice areas here. So I'm going to pop off camera again and I'll come back and tell you what I've done. So I'm just now continuing to build that very lightly, that sort of tonal value on the face. So don't worry, like you say, I've just made that mark there. All you would do is wash it out, get a bit of a tissue and just very gently soak up the moisture, and then you'll be able to just blend that out how you want it. What I'm going to do is turn the picture on as well, because it looks, I can't really tell. So we can see just by the shape of the mouth there, she kind of doesn't look like on here she's kind of smiling, and then on here it needs a lot of work. So that's upside down. So I am going to see if I can just work with that shape. So you really need to be able to identify like where it is that where it's not like matching. As soon as you do that, then you're able to fix it. I'll just jump off camera, see what I can do, sort of fix that problem, and then I'll walk through how I did it. So I am just building on this area next to where the mouth is, just trying to figure out the shape, because even though we have the pencil line underneath, it does get lost sometimes, so you do have to sometimes tap into your artistic ability as well. But I think I'm getting happier with it. But the thing is, like I always say about watercolours, they are very forgiving, so if you make a mistake you can easily just go and wash it out with the water and then come back to it. And I'm just in random parts wherever I see. It's just the way that I work, to be honest. And I'm constantly sort of drying my brush as well, so that I can control where I'm putting the watercolour. And then there's certain areas down here, and it's these parts, these little details where you add in that tone, that will make it look more realistic and like a photograph. So again, there's still that eyebrow area, but I don't want to give a full-on brows because it is just like ever so slightly a darker tone. So we could even just suggest that there's an eyebrow. We don't have to do every single little hair. Now we'll continue to just blend all of these together. So if we go back to what we discussed at the beginning, I am using a lot of these techniques even without thinking about them. So we're definitely looking at the tonal value, mixing with water. We're definitely blending the colours together. We did a wash. I would say that we're layering as well. And we're doing like varied washes as well, because I wash the entire page and then I just put a wash over the face area as well. So I'm going to turn that around again so you can see it is starting to take shape a little bit better. I mean, it's no means perfect to what I would want it to be yet, but it will take like a very long time for me to become happy with work, because I know that we are our own worst critic. The screen, and see, I do want to kind of make the mouth look like it's smiling a bit more, because even though it's got pen all over it, you can definitely see. I think it's this highlighted area. I think I'm going to have to wait for it to dry and go back in with lighter colours. And also I think it's the three-dimensional bit here where this area of the lip, where the lip and the nose sort of made this shape. I'm just going to actually see on camera whether I can mimic that shape a little bit better. I'm going to start off with just a darker line and then wash the brush out and just very nicely blend it and copy those shapes. I think I've got a little bit too much moisture on the brush. I'm going to try that again with a bit less, like a hairline of paint, and then very gently just blend in. And it kind of blends to there and then it blends out. So I'm going to totally wash and dry the brush. It's important that your brush is dry because you'll lose all of this work. And then just blend it out. So I feel like that adds a little bit more dimension to it. I need to darken that area in order to make it look a little bit more like a smile. But I know that it is quite a dark photograph actually to pick up the detail. But I hope by completing this piece of work on camera that all of the little sort of tips and tricks are coming through, and if you face any of these sort of barriers or if you have any sort of concerns while you're creating your portrait, if you decide to create one, then I hope I'm answering some of your questions. But if you have any specific questions, I'll be live once this video goes live at 6 o'clock. I'll be available all the way up until 8 o'clock, so if you have any questions, just put them in the chat option, or you can post them on the Artrium Facebook page and I'll get straight back to you. It just takes a lot of time and a lot of patience if you want to get all that detail. I'm just going in with some darker tones now, just ever so slightly. And don't forget, always look at your reference piece. So sort of next week when we look at landscapes, you won't really have to concentrate too much on the detail, although there will be some areas of detail that you will, we're not exactly doing abstract, we will be creating some sort of scene, but it doesn't have to be as precise. I think portraits are in some ways more difficult than landscapes. I'm just going to define a little bit more areas down here. I've made like a shape for where a hand is there, and I will go in and add more detail to that. So she's actually laying down. So, oops, I mean it's getting there, it doesn't look exact yet, but yours might not either, so don't worry about it having to be perfect. So we'll have to continue and build on this, and then eventually I might be happy with it one day, but you can definitely see that it's inspired by the picture and that it's undeniable. Got a lot of work to do with it. You can certainly see that shadow there on the eye. It needs to sort of come all the way down and meet down there. So we can see that taking a little bit more shape, although I wouldn't like it to be as harsh. I can see that there's a bit of moisture building, so I'm going with the tissue and just blend that out a bit more. So remember, you can always get that paint off your brush and blend out if you're not really happy with any of the harsh lines that you make. And what I would like to do is add some colour to this as well. So I think once it's dried, I might add a wash of colour, like a beige kind of because you can't really tell, but there is a little bit of colour within the photo. So even this kind of harsh line on the nose there, we can wash it out. So this is what I've got so far. I think what we need to do is I need to wash out this eye a bit more and add more highlights here, because it's going to be totally blackened, but that is how it is on the picture. So what I think I'm going to do at this point, because I am going to end up being on this video for like 3 hours if I don't stop now, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to show you what I've done so far. You can see a little bit better if I hold it up like that. It is starting to take shape, but there is a lot that I would like to add to it. I need to wait for it to dry, to add more layers, and just to make it look a bit more like the photo. So, but it will get there in the end, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm not going to put pressure on to get it finished straight away. I think I'll get it finished for the exhibition, and you'll be able to see sort of how I've developed it since now. But I just wanted to show you here I always have like a scrap piece of watercolour paper so that I can test what is going to go on the page before I actually commit to doing it. And also I've got the lid of the palette, and it's got all of my little variations of greys and blacks and a little bit of that wash that we put on at the beginning. So if you've got any questions while you're completing your piece of artwork, just get in touch with me, let me know, and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. Like I said, I'm going to leave the video here and just use the technique of monoprinting if you want, or you can draw straight onto the watercolour paper to paint it if you're feeling brave. I certainly wasn't today. So next time, in our fourth and final video, we're going to be looking at landscapes, and you won't need to get any specific pictures or anything like that, but you can if you want to paint your favourite scene, or maybe it's somewhere that you like to go out and for walks, whether it's a beach scene or a countryside scene. If you want something specific, then certainly prepare that for it. But don't worry if you don't, because we can just improvise and we can make up our own landscapes as well. So I hope you enjoyed this portrait video. Again, just get in touch if you have any questions. I'd really love to see what you come up with. So post any of your work that you've made from this project onto the Artrium's Facebook community page. And I will see you next time. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.